Hey guys, it's your girl Aisha, aka geekxxchic, and I'm back with another review to The Flash. This is for episode 7, which was called Come Ye, or Come All Ye Thankful, something along those lines. I'm sorry, I can't remember. This was more than like 3 words. My brain doesn't even care, but I digress. You get the point. This episode of The Flash, we had quite a bit go down. Primarily, we got some movement on the whole Cicada as a villain story arc, and we got the backstory on Cicada. And this is important, in my opinion, because one of the things that season 4 did really, really well, in my opinion, was finally giving these villains a really good and thorough backstory. In past seasons, outside of season 1 with Eobard Thawne, we didn't really see why a big bad was a big bad, or we got a very thin story around why they were doing what they were doing or why they were coming for Barry. But this last season with the Thinker, they did such a great job with giving him this whole full rich backstory, having us get to know who Clifford was, who his wife was, the relationship, watching his actual evolution from being the bad guy or the good guy with somewhat altruistic intentions that got twisted and turned into what we eventually saw. So it was one of those things where, as an audience, we could understand where Clifford was coming from, even if we didn't agree with his methods. And that's so important to me when you're developing a villain, especially if it's a big overarching villain, because typically most people don't wake up one morning and think, I'm gonna be evil. Much like Barry, who made that joke in the episode about, oh, your daughter just woke up one morning and was like, I'm gonna break my dad out of jail. Like, it doesn't just happen like that. There's usually a lot of things that lead up to that, to whatever it is that they're doing, or the fact that they're willing to kill someone who is by nature doing good, like Barry. So you need that backstory in order for us as the audience to understand it and maybe even empathize with it. But like I said, it's typically the delivery and how they choose to execute that justice or whatever it is that is not the best way, or that is where things go wrong. So they did that a bit with Cicada. It was a lot faster because, you know, last season with DeVoe, it took probably the better half of the first half of the season for us to get the whole backstory. Like, they really built it up. We had it over multiple episodes, but they kind of did all of Cicada's backstory in one episode, which to me actually adds to the belief system that I have, which is that he's not the big bad of the season. Like, I don't think Cicada is the same villain we're going to be dealing with, like, now and also at the end of the season. Even though I don't think his storyline is getting wrapped up before the break, I don't think he is our big bad. I think there is a big bad from the future. Whoever told Nora about the chip, removed it for her, suggested she try to interfere with the satellite, all those things. I think we have another bad who's bigger and more dangerous and smarter than Cicada that we just haven't been introduced to yet. In 2 weeks' time, we have the crossover event happening starting on the 9th. And it's over 3 shows, so my guess is going to be Supergirl, Arrow, and The Flash, which makes the most sense to me, honestly. Legends is fine, but I've always felt like they didn't really work as well in the whole crossover thing as much, but I could be wrong about that. Maybe they're just going to shoehorn them in to the other episodes, but I digress. I feel like by that crossover event was when we're possibly going to see a bigger bad, and maybe this bigger bad might be scanning across more than one of the shows. Maybe not Supergirl, because Supergirl is in its own universe, but maybe across Arrow and The Flash, I could totally see this villain potentially touching both of those shows since they share a universe. But anyway, that's kind of what we got on Cicada. We saw that in the beginning he really wasn't, it's a touching story. It's a very relatable story of him getting, I thought that Gracie was his daughter, and to find out that it's actually his niece and that his sister, it looks like, died as the result of a meta attack, that already planted a seed in his mind about metas, which was obviously not a good one. Unfortunately, a lot of things have gotten twisted in Orland's mind to think that metas are solely responsible for all the things that are wrong in this world, and that was the birth of this man who feels that he needs to kill metas no matter who they are. Again, I don't fully understand why he's coming for Barry, though, in the sense of the Flash stopped that satellite from doing far more damage than it did. Of course, people still got hurt, but they already said that if he hadn't stepped in, it would have been catastrophic. Like, the Central City would have been gone. Orland would be dead. His niece would be dead. So it just seems strange to me that he's twisted it around, and it seems like Barry is almost his focal point of his anger, which makes no sense to me. But we'll probably get more, I'm hoping we'll get more about that later on. But yeah, it's this nurse, this doctor, she's a doctor, I'm sorry, I should stop calling her a nurse. This doctor we see was the one who kind of planted the seed of blaming metas. I mean, it had to have already been in Orland to some degree for him to jump on board so quickly, but that's why she's on board with this. Clearly she's not sympathetic at all to the fact that metas are being hurt and killed by him. And that's why I can't wait for when he inevitably turns on her, because you can't go down this road of just killing people like he is and not eventually turn on the people who come in your path. You know what I'm saying? I'm just waiting for her. There's going to be a point where I think she's going to feel like it's too far. And when that day comes and she tries to stand in his way, it's probably the last time we're going to see her. Anyway, it's nice to finally get an idea of what that whole relationship's about and how that came about. And poor Gracie, she's been out since that satellite fell, so that's a long time to be in a coma. We got that. We now know Cicada's backstory. We know why he's coming for metas. It's not a very deep storyline, but a revenge is always a good cause for people to go on a rampage, as it were. And now we know this is revenge not only for Gracie, but for his sister. And I don't think that the Flash is actually his sole target. Like, unlike other villains who specifically were coming for the Flash, I think he just wants metas gone. And the Flash happens to be a meta, and someone that he knows will try to stop him. So I think that's the only reason that the Flash and Nora and Cisco and all of them are on his list. But it's not necessarily that he's specifically going for Barry, though it might change to that if Barry gets in his way again. Other half of the episode was West Allen stuff, which was tied into the villain of the week, which was Weather Witch. We just see this girl, of course, this story with... I thought it was a little bit funny that they were like, they had the Weather Wizard guy saying that he had her when he was in high school. I'm like, he'd have to have, because the actress they picked to play his daughter, like, could they not have at least chosen like a teenager? Like, that actor, I always remember him from Spartacus. Like, he's only like 38. Like, there's no way he would have a daughter who looks like that actress looked to me to be at least in her mid to late 20s. I was like, y'all, this girl could not be his child. Like, she's just a little, like, you could have aged her down a bit. He would have had to be like 12 when she was born, but I digress. Of course, we have the father-daughter drama between him and his daughter to mirror what's going on with Nora. She had that, oh my gosh. And like, first of all, let's just give a small like hand of applause to Jessica Parker Kennedy for knocking out that little performance when Barry died, the panic in her face, the way she handled it, and then just the utter relief and fear when she was hugging him when he came back. Like, that was so brilliantly acted, and oh, it got to me. I was like, oh my God, Nora. I felt so bad for her in that moment. No one ever wants to watch their parent die in front of them. Just terrifying. And I think she perfectly captured what that would be like. And, you know, we had some people, a lot of people have been kind of on Jessica because of the way that Nora's been acting in the first half of this season, you know, with, first of all the impudence and petulance towards Iris, and then the temper tantrums and all that. The long and the short of it is that is the writing and the editing of the show, because I've seen Jessica Parker Kennedy. She was on Black Sails. For those of you who don't know her from anything else, she was on a show called Black Sails, which is phenomenal, by the way. You should watch it. And her character on that show was a very complex, dark, layered, textured character, and she blew that performance out of the water. Like, she was so good. So I know it's not a matter of lack of capability. She's a fantastic actress, and I feel like we got a taste of that in this episode. But I just feel like, unfortunately, they haven't written Nora to have a lot of range on the show, and she's supposed to be like a girl in her mid to late 20s, and they've written her like a teenager, and it's kind of frustrating because a lot of her behavior earlier in the season towards Iris was just it's just very juvenile. You know, it didn't befit to me a person in their 20s. I expected that from a teenager, not from a girl who has lived a little bit of life. And I don't know if it's the writers just in their minds just couldn't make up their minds if they wanted Nora to be a teenager or not, but they didn't really write her, in my opinion, the way that you would write a 20-something who had daddy issues or mommy issues, right? So I blame the writing and the editing of her character for why she kind of came off so hot and cold earlier this season. I know that a lot of people also were not about how friendly she was with Iris last episode after being so distant with her before. But again, in this episode, when we see after she witnesses her dad die, she comes back to the control center and she throws shade at Iris again, right? She's just like, well, maybe someone else should be calling the shots. Like, this 0 to 100 that they're doing with her character, it doesn't do anything to make her seem more appealing. You know, it's really not helping her in the least. And I don't know why the writers have chosen to make her this way. I don't see what the benefit is, especially when you have such a strong actor to play that role. But I really hope that if she's going to be around for the duration of this season, that they can find a way to kind of level her out, because she just does come off a little too immature for a 20-something to me. And maybe she's lied about how old she is. Maybe we're going to find out at the end of the season that she is actually only 17 or 18 years old. But it just, a lot of her kind of tantrumy moments, just like I said, don't come off as someone who I believe to be in their 20s. I'm not saying she shouldn't be emotional and have her moments, but she really just kind of is very pouty teenager in a lot of the way she handles things. And like I said, when she came back from after what happened with her dad, and she kind of lashed out at Iris, and she lashed out at Barry. I mean, at least she was equally angry at both of them, which was, that's progress, I suppose. But it just seems like just very juvenile, a very young way to deal with it. And at the end, it was much better to see her actually articulating her feelings with Barry, basically saying, listen, you know, I have lost you already. I was angry at you for a long time because it seems like you chose to leave instead of stay with me. And this is so true of any child of someone who is in a dangerous job. It is very hard on the people who love them. And if they do unfortunately have something happen to them, sometimes those left behind do feel anger and resentment towards them, thinking, you know, you chose this dangerous job over me. She made some valid points. I couldn't argue with what Nora said. Like, he could give up being the Flash. He could stop throwing himself into daily danger to reduce the risk that something could happen to him. It's not going to eliminate it, of course, because the world's just a dangerous place in general, but I get where she was coming from. And Barry had to admit that it is a bit of a selfish choice. You know, he's choosing to be the Flash. He's choosing to use his gifts in the way that he does. And some of it is a bit of self-gratification, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, if your self-gratification comes from helping others, that's kind of the best way to be. But the price of it is that his family and friends and people who love him are constantly worrying. And oh my gosh, that moment where we see Iris just give that... You know, she's become so good at getting ready to hear at any given moment that Barry's either gone or dead, and which is horrible when you think about it. No woman should have to go through that, especially Iris. But the fact that she's become so accustomed to almost expecting bad news about Barry was so heartbreaking. It's just part of life now. She recognizes that if she's going to be married to the Flash and she's part of the Flash, this comes with the territory. And it sucks, but it is what it is. And I could see how that would feed into how she is and potentially was in the future, where she became so emotionally distant because that was her way to deal with all of it, year after year after, you know, decades of dealing with it. So anyways, it was a nice moment though, in that Nora kind of forced Barry to kind of admit that it isn't easy, but also to explain why he does it and let her have that closure. Because of course, with her growing up without a dad, she wouldn't have had the closure of knowing why Barry did it, and to understand that it wasn't a matter of him saying, I choose death or I choose being in danger all the time over you. It's that I'm doing it for you, really. Because in that moment, when we saw him take down the Weather Witch, I mean, it wasn't just saving those people, he was saving Nora. He was saving Iris and everybody else in the city that would have been very negatively impacted by a giant lightning storm, right? Who else is going to take her down? It was a nice moment. I love anything where the West Allen family is bonding more. It was cute to see them all bonding over dinner. Absolutely love the shout out to the real origins of Thanksgiving and the fact that it really is not something that should be celebrated for its original purpose. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but I'm glad that they at least brought it up and brought up the fact that it really isn't. The history behind it is pretty dark and not that great, but for what they were celebrating, which is their time together and the fact that they care about each other, it definitely was beautiful to see. And of course, shout out to Joe that couldn't be there, but hopefully he will be back in the new year, because I do miss seeing him, and he would have had so many great speeches. I just think of all the great speeches that he could be having right now with Iris and with Nora that we're missing out on, but hopefully we'll get time to make up for that in the new year. Only other side things that kind of stood out to me is the fact that Nora said that she's been there for a few months now. And I've mentioned before that it's strange to me that Nora has not been feeling the effects of being in this timeline for so long, because we saw in Flashpoint in season 4 or 3 that Barry started to feel the effects of changing the timeline. He started to lose memories and not be the person he was before. So why that's not happening to Nora is very strange to me. But that makes me think of whoever sent her there must have known there was a reason or a way that she could maybe stave that off or keep it from happening. I'm also wondering why they haven't been checking the article in the White Room as far as Barry's disappearance, because again, she's changed so much already since she's been here, so maybe the article's already changed and no one's been checking. My one bone to pick with this episode was the moment at the end when all of them, you know, the Team Flash crew decided they weren't going to celebrate Thanksgiving or anything, and they're drinking, and Killer Frost shows up, and she basically is the one to tell them that they need to go to the family that loves them, and, you know, like, they're being losers for being there. It's just, I don't know how I feel about Killer Frost being the softie all of a sudden. Like, I just feel like the writers are trying so hard to sell this character who they've messed up so badly to the audience, and it just didn't feel natural or right at all, because Killer Frost would completely be, it would have been the other way around. Let's be real. From the way that she's been painted since she showed up on this show, she would have been the one drinking with the guy saying, screw this, we don't need no Thanksgiving, let's go party. And Caitlin would have been the one saying, no, let's be with our family. To have her be the one who has to haul everybody there, it just felt so forced to me and unnatural for the character. Like, if you want to redeem this character, which at this point I don't see why, but if you do, the writers are going to have to take their time with it, because it's too jarring. Like, we know what Killer Frost has been like right up until last season. We're not going to just forget that because she encouraged Caitlin to go for turkey. But on the outside of that, I thought it was quite funny that they used Sherlock's character to kind of, you know, stir some piping hot tea about some of the flaws that have been happening with the show and with things that have gone down between season 4 and now. I thought it was kind of cute. I like when the show gets a little bit meta on itself in moments like that. They did a lot of that last season, and I kind of missed it in this season. I feel like the writers kind of pulled back on that a bit, and I personally liked it, because yes, we're still watching a show that's very fantastical and full of suspension of disbelief, but it's fun to be able every so often to kind of just put a little finger on the pulse of the show and let everyone know that the writers are there, that they're reading stuff, that they're listening. And that was one of those moments, I think, where they used Sherlock to kind of let everyone know, yeah, this is, we know how this has gone down. We know what you're seeing here, and we're aware of it. It was an overall, like I said, it was a decent episode. I wouldn't say it's my favorite of the season so far, but it definitely is good. And my biggest takeaways from it, obviously, is that we at least know Cicada's story, and at least the team now knows who Cicada is and where they can start to figure out how to take him down. So what did you guys think of this episode? How are you feeling about Nora as a character? Do you like where they're taking her so far? Or are you feeling a little bit annoyed with the kind of back and forth 0 to 100 where she's concerned? And also, how do you feel about the idea that Cicada is not the big bad of the series? It feels like they're getting ready to wrap his story up pretty quickly, which means that leaves a whole other half a season for more villainry. Who do you think it is if it's not Cicada? Please leave your comments below. Let me know what you're thinking. You know I love finding out what you guys are thinking about and getting in that conversation with y'all. And if you like this video, guys, please click like. And if you want to see more from this geeky face, please click subscribe. Until next time, see ya.